Hi, I'm Dr. Mike.
And I'm Nick.
And this is NFGeeks.
Geeks.
Nick, thanks again, for coming on
Yes.
NFGeeks. So let's continue from the last discussion about the difference between judging and perceiving and how this comes in with introverts, specifically introverted intuitives. Okay. And I was kind of talking about this a little bit in the last thing, but I'm a little more critical of the person. I think that the as opposed to like somehow, well, the functions are like this and they can't help it. I don't have that opinion. I have the opinion that that people are not knowing themselves or wanting to be something they aren't or wanting a profile that they want. I find that again, people sort of wish they weren't a certain way with these types, and I think the mistake is within the individual. I don't think that it's a natural thing that's just occurring because the way these things are set up. I don't know. I'll have to do statistics, but I'm going to speculate that there are INFPs and INTPs and INFJs and INTJs who don't have this problem at all.
Yeah.
Okay. And that the problem is with certain people who are not liking the way they are. And that really, if they just sort of had some self-knowledge, some metacognition, they wouldn't have this problem. And it has nothing to do with whether or not what's going on with the function. So I'm more critical of the people than they are. So, all right, so what do you think about that?
Well, I think there's two kinds of people. Like, as you're saying this, I'm like, there's totally two kinds of people. I think a lot of INFPs and INTPs really get kind of just frustrated and beaten down by lack of external organization. They're just completely like, I've taken too many hits, blah, blah, blah. As you said in the last video, there's kind of like this internal wanting to be, more judging. That will make me a better person.
Yes.
That'll solve all my problems.
Certainly a mistake.
Yeah.
In judging. Like INFPs think they're judgmental. They're not. They're critical. They criticize people. There's a difference between criticizing and judging.
That's,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's a good valid point.
You know what I mean? I could like look at you and think that you're a jerk, but that doesn't mean I'm going to make a decision. I might treat you just the same. Whereas a judger isn't going to treat you the same once they've judged you.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, even I'll finish what I was going to say, but then I'll jump into something else that you just kind of brought up. That kind of goes with just the definitions of judging and perceiving. But anyway, I was saying that INTPs, INFPs kind of have this natural kind of tendency externally to be disorganized, whatever. That's what it is. And like you said, they kind of have this envy, this type envy for kind of the J counterpart. Like, oh, I wish I was like that. See, to me, that internal longing or wanting to be more judging comes from the fact that the first thing that they lead with is, I want to get something done. I want this done. I have either an ideal that I want to see the rest of the world reflect, or I have this internal framework. Say, like an INFP might have this value system, this ideal. This is what I want. This is what I want to see in the world. Almost a more judgmental kind of way of thinking, where they start with that. And say INTPs have this kind of internal framework, this technical kind of thing, like it should be like this, more judgmental. But then when it kind of kicks into, say, extroverted intuition mode, it gets a little more, it doesn't follow. Whereas, and another thing I have to say is that I just don't see this as much with extroverts. I don't see ENFPs saying, oh, I wish I was an ENFJ.
Oh, no, of course not. There's no ENFP that wishes they were, even on the worst ENFP day.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And I never see any, say, ENFJ or ENTJ or anything like that who are like, oh God, I wish I was just more of a perceiver or anything. I wish I was an ENFP. I wish I was an ENTP.
Maybe briefly, for like a minute, just sort of playing with it. But
what I'm seeing is tons and tons and tons of even say INTJs or maybe not as much INTJ, but INFJs who are just like, I feel more like a perceiver. I feel more like this. And maybe I am an INFP. Maybe I am an INTP. And I'm telling you, I think it is. I can give you my perspective on my personal feeling. My preferred, when I wake up in the morning, okay, if I could completely have it my way, just completely whatever, I'd prefer, not so much externally, but I would prefer to just contemplate all day. You know, if the function stack is a correct theory, if it really does mean something, yes, I would prefer to be in introverted intuition land all day. When I come in contact with my environment, my external tendency navigating the world is a judging one. But it's second place to the it's second place.
But I think I would put that up to wishful thinking, that you wish you were a perceiver, because you don't actually end up doing the perceiving thing.
Exactly.
You actually do the judging thing. And if you didn't do the judging thing during the day and whatever it is you have to do in terms of making things orderly, I think you'd be miserable. You know
no,
what I mean?
exactly. But now
so you don't really. Somewhere. So it's not all right. But that means it's wishful thinking on your part. Not that somehow, because what I hear is that somehow there's some sort of a functional. Well, you know, if this was structured differently. See, I don't think See, I don't blame the structure. I blame the person.
Sure,
I blame the individual not having their act together regarding what's going on in their brain.
That's why. See, that's why a discussion like this is good, because, you know, these are two totally opposing arguments. Just trying to uncover what the real theory is, you know, what it is. This is my point of view and the point of view of a lot of others, and totally your point of view is also held by people who are just locked into their type, and they see that it's the individual who's kind of messing with it, whereas, you know, there's a part of me that's saying, you know, maybe if the questions were different, maybe if the MBTI incorporated more functional stuff, people would be typed more accurately. See, I bring this up because I do feel like, I don't necessarily feel like the MBTI is flawed, but I do feel like it can be improved.
Sure, that's going to be a topic hopefully we'll talk about today, if we can get to that.
But,
all right, that's true, but I think even as it's constructed, it's constructed well enough that most people can certainly get to type. It's certainly better than, you know, it's more than 50%. I mean, it's really very good.
Yep.
I think what happens, though, is I don't think they're being guided by professionals. I think that people are just sort of thinking about, you know, they're thinking about the functions, or they've taken some other inventory, or even they've taken the MBTI because they got it, you know, pirated.
Yeah.
It was, you know, you know, some SP pirates, you know.
Really? Yeah.
Who, you know, took the booty and is now sharing it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's like stealing things off the internet, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know.
No one would ever do that. Maybe,
I know.
Maybe an SP would do it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Only an S-pirate.
An SP would do that.
See, sea pirates, that's a metaphor for SP.
Okay.
See, it's in there. All right, so that's okay, but, you know, granted, it's not perfect. The MBTI isn't perfect. It's not, you know, it's from God.
We both can, I mean, we've talked about this before, and like the one thing that I know that both of us can agree on is that, like, taking the MBTI, the official MBTI, with a practitioner present, I do agree with you on that. That is the way to figure out your type.
Well, let me ask you something. Why are you so reluctant to not blame the person? In other words, you sort of, you know, again, the way I hear it from you is that this is a structural issue. You know what I mean? The way this is all structured, and INFPs and INFJs can't help it because it's constructed this way. See, I think they can help it.
No,
I think they're not helping it.
This is no. This is where two things.
Sure.
One, I do, and I said this earlier too. I do feel as though the problem is with a lot of people, certain people. I think in the last video I did say that some people are just wishing to be a different type. There's that group of people who really are just trying to fabricate their type because they didn't like what came out. They didn't like the result that they got on the MBTI. That's one. Two, the second group of people are people who just naturally feel exactly how the functions are stacked. That is just their natural way of feeling, and the confusion comes in that, well, if my judging function is second in external, it's not what dominates me. It's what backs up something else. So that I naturally would, and kind of what you said kind of almost validated like what I'm saying is that, yes, in the external world, I'm totally I act as a judger. I go into the kind of automatic judging mode when I'm in the environment. But to say that that's what dominates me, just from a functional standpoint, it's not. What dominates me is intuition.
Sure.
And if there was no outside world and I could just kind of sit around all day, that's what I would prefer.
I suppose, but I also would argue that if you weren't acting in a judging way through the world, you would be miserable.
I would be miserable.
Right. Yeah. So it's not just then it's
but
not
in the world.
Sure.
That's the difference, is that externally.
All right, but I would say that's more of a criticism of yourself than it is like, why don't I should be able to do this, or why can't I do this? I don't, or maybe it's a part of wishful thinking. I think that you may prefer to do that, but I think that's just in your mind. And if you actually did that, you'd be miserable. So go do that. Go try to just, take a day off and try to, be in your mind all day, and let's see where that goes.
Oh, you mean that? You mean that eventually I'd have this drive?
Yes, or you just be miserable, what I mean? Like, I really wish I was this other way.
I can answer that to you right now. If there was something in the external environment that was prompting me to be more of a judger, I'd buckle, and I would just have to get up and do something, but only if externally prompted.
Sure. Another thing
be it a person or a situation that I'm aware of, I'm like, I gotta do it.
Sure.
I gotta just do that, and I would. That's the difference. Is I would do it.
Getting back something you said before we just went into this thing is that, talking about the functions and people trying to, work it out. When people are taking the MBTI, they're not thinking about functions for the most part.
No.
So, I mean,
I
they're
agree
not,
with you.
so they're just sort of, they might not even be conscious how they're making these mistakes, okay, because it's all happening in this sort of unconscious shame place, you know what I mean, or just whatever, where the inferiority complex is creating itself. And because of that, I think they're not really working it through. And this is what I mean, like, I blame the person. They're not really working through as to who they really are. You know what I mean? They have sort of some internal fears about it. And I think that's screwing this up. All right, you got 1 more minute. So go ahead, give us one final thought.
Yeah, no, like I said, we agree that the MBTI is taking it with a practitioner, the official, real McCoy way, is the way to do it, But I do feel like if there is a judging or perceiving question, is to kind of look deeper into it, because the MBTI is I feel like that should be the first step. If there's still a question, look at the functions and how they're stacked. And there might be an explanation why you either feel more like a perceiver or a judger, but act more like, say, a perceiver or a judger, depending on what you really are.
Okay. Well, chime in on this and tell us what you think. This should be a fascinating idea to talk about. And so can't wait to hear the comments. So that's great. So Noah, why don't you take us out, please?